encourage that way, so.
I think it but that's obviously, right?
Yeah, that's like really the problem case, just like you do, you have a lot of jobs.
Right, if there was an issue, then they most certainly would address it in some fashion, whether it's signage or, you know, if they don't already have that. I'm trying to think of, I mean, we've done 7 or 8 of these facilities with them, and there's generally a lot of, you know, security and landscaping and, you know, I would say interest in preventing stuff like that, but I just don't want to, you know, I mean, if I absolutely had to agree to the 6 feet, I'm sure I could, but I would prefer the board just acknowledged and accepted that I'll bring that request to the owner and that the plan as we are presenting it technically meets all the requirements.
That's something you should administer.
Would we be able to do that? Because technically it meets the requirements as it is. Like, I don't know, like you can't make him put up a 6-foot fence because you think that. Even because he meets the requirements now.
Eventually, I guess it's not, they stay required. Whether or not we can. I think all we can do is ask for it, if he'll do it. But still, we have to, in my mind, we have to approve the changes because he did exactly what he said. And if it is agreeable with the builder, that would just be notified the planning office with the.
We would include it on the final plans.
When you take the compliance. We get great questions from people. I've asked already. But did you, man, you have?
Yeah, maybe mine's out of the thing, but you know, we had the, oh, sorry, Sharon DeRitter, I live on Wilson Pond. Sharon, sorry, D. Ritter. It might be like you say, out of the bailiwick of this one, but we had the 1,000-year flood. And you know, and most of the time you go by 100-year flood, but I don't know if that pond, if you stop me, then I'm okay. But I don't know if that pond is gonna take it and then it's gonna come into Wilson Pond. So I don't know, or to the airport. I don't know. Yeah, you can't. Sorry. That's okay.
And for how long that they have compliance with that. Second, all in favor? Thank you. Next, we'll move on to 22021, plan sharing from Fieldstone Land Consultants on behalf of North Development Corp. Some of the provisions, approved site plan, restricted multifamily development, 115 Wilkinson Highway. The commission included updated drainage plan, updated utility plan, updated landscaping plans, architectural depictions, reconfigured parking plan. The site property, 37 lots and this section. Where that is public hearing for that. You have a speech here? Okay.
Evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, again, for the record, my name is Chad Graham, civil engineer with Fieldstone Land Consultants. We're representing a new development with their compliance hearing this evening for the Plainview elderly housing or senior housing development at tax map parcel 37 lot 7-115 at 115 Old Homestead Highway. With this submission, it's a kind of what we had submitted before. I know there was a request for me to bring the old plans and the new plans so that we could try to go back and forth. With this project, we had modified the parking layout. Or we talked about that. As a condition of approval, we have to modify the parking layout in the back to accommodate no waiver in the parking lot reduction. So this was the plan that we had presented and was ultimately conditionally approved. This plan, if you recall, showed kind of a future parking area back here, but we didn't really finalize or formalize that because the board unfortunately at the time denied our waiver of 20% reduction request. So with this layout, we needed 118 parking spaces. The current layout that we have before you depicts the 118 spaces. And it shows an improvement to the landscaping. We also addressed the drainage and utilities for the project. And then in just looking at, you can go into as much detail as the board would like on that. But in looking at the staff memo, what I want to focus on is there were some questions relative to the drainage plan, utilities plan, landscaping plan. And so we took the opportunity this week to make those adjustments. And I brought 11 by 17 with plans, color plans with me. I just want to go over the very minor modifications, and I think it'll show that we have sufficiently addressed all the requirements. And so, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, I hand these out to the board, and then I can just walk through the changes.
That'd be something I sure really got it.
That was submitted, that we had a hearing for
Yeah, there's very few revisions to the plans that are before you and the ones that I have before you. So happy to go over those. I think the first place to start, well, I guess just taking a look at the set. We'll just walk down through those. The drainage plan, there was a comment that the drainage plan is incomplete because we didn't show the ribbon around the building and the connection to the drainage system. So basically all that is around the building, the entire building, we have a stone drip edge, and that has a 6-inch perforated pipe. And that perforated pipe does tie into the drainage system. So we have shown that stone drip edge on this revised plan that we have in front of you. And then we've shown 3 connections to the drainage trunk line that was part of the plans that we submitted. So there'll be a connection out in the front corner of the building where it'll tie into the catch basin there. There'll be a connection in the middle where we'll tie into the catch basin 2, and then there'll be another connection down here. We typically don't show perimeter drains and connections until we get into a construction plan set. But it was a valid question, a good question brought up during the plan review. So we wanted to, detail that on these plan sets. We normally don't show that because foundation design change, a little bit when they go to a structural engineer. And so they might recommend, instead of a 6-inch, we want to do an 8-inch here. But we have one calculation of 6-inch would work. That 6-inch pipe goes around the entire perimeter of the building, and again, tie in to 3 locations. So that really addresses the drainage question on this one.
The one you submit to the state. That going to show exactly what you have now.
Yeah. And the state ultimately approves, so the treatment components on this project are the chamber system in the back. So we're not accounting for this perimeter drain for treatment. That perimeter drain ties into the closed drainage system and ultimately goes to the stack chamber system. So this is really what the state will focus on, but that perimeter drain is part of their review. So that's the one change for drainage. As far as the utilities plan, there's a note in the staff memo that says the updated utility plan shall include a manhole as requested at the street intersection. That's this connection right here. That manhole actually is already in. When we secured approvals for the landowner, Mr. Thomas, he actually put that manhole in and the stub onto the site because DOT was coming through with paving the highway, and there's a 5-year moratorium when the state does that. So he did that to make sure that he could have that utility connection wasn't going to be held up by that moratorium. So that manhole is there. That's why we were not showing the proposed manhole, but for whatever reason, the symbol for the existing manhole was not depicted, and so we had added that and said that before you. So a very minor change on that one. I will say too, just so that everybody knows, the addition of the perimeter drain, we also did add a detail to the detail sheet, the stone drip edge perimeter drain that shows the the stone material, the the dimensions, the 6-inch pipe. So it's part of the construction set. It's not just detailed on a plan. Plan view. Sorry to be hopping. That's why there's 4 plans. One was the detail sheet, the last one. And then the last item consists of the landscaping. I personally did the calculations for the landscaping this week because this calculation for some reason can get very complicated. And I tried to really detail and simplify this because I think what happens is, we're running a lot of calculations and sometimes we group them and it's hard to check them. And so what I did is, and you'll see on the landscaping sheet that's in front of you, sheet 6, I the areas that I'm counting in the back of the parking area for landscaping. So, and when I ran the numbers, I was short by about 50 square feet. And so we removed one parking space, which is 152 square feet, just so you know. And we've updated the site plan that is in front of you, shows an updated parking calculation where 117 spaces are required, and now we have 117 instead of 1. Taking a look at this plan, what I've done is this kind of heavy gray line shows the outline of the parking area. This is the area that people occupy with a car, pull into a parking space. And it's the area where you would typically square off the parking. So when you have these 4 internal spaces, which are clearly internal, come out to about 2,500 square feet. And then we have these corner areas, which are also internal. We've always been able to count those as internal because if we square up the parking lot, it's internal. It's not counted for a buffer. It's not counted for anything else. It's part of the parking. This total area, this big area here is, and it's not on the sheet, but I wanted to just explain to everybody how I calculated this so that we can hopefully come to some understanding. This heavy gray line has an area of 37,527 square feet. Okay. You have to take out the landscaping areas because you can't count the landscaping areas towards a parking landscaping calculation. So that 37,527 square feet, take out the landscaping areas, which is all of these green hatched areas total 3,433 square feet. That gives you a total impervious parking area of 34,094 square feet. And you notice I updated that on the landscaping requirements as well. 10% of that is 3,409 square feet. And we have 3,433 square feet. So we meet that landscaping parking requirement. This parking lot in the back has 100 spaces. 100 spaces. Your new site plan regulations have a requirement of 10 square feet per space in a parking lot. Your new site plan requirements would require 1,000 square feet. We have 3,409 square feet. We're not, didn't make any changes. There was a lot of discussion at the last meeting. There was a number thrown out that we, and I think it's mentioned in the staff memo that we have to be at. There was actually a vote on this number, 3,360 square feet. So we exceed that number as well. We've never gone to this extent.
For the record, so how many square feet is landscaping there for?
We have 3,409 square feet. Which is required, that's required. We are providing 3,433 square feet. And so we believe we've addressed this landscaping topic. I think there was a lot of confusion in how we were doing that. This exhibit is intended to show exactly what we're doing. And, interestingly enough, your new regulations essentially are exactly how we calculated it in the first place, which is you take the parking area and you take 10% of that. Parking lot or a parking space is 162 square feet. 10% of that is 16 square feet. The regulations are 10. So, we're kicking around a lot of numbers, but I think we clearly meet what we talked about, and it appears as though we meet what the intent is because of what the current regulations are. But I'm not looking to confuse anything. I just want to be very open and very upfront on how we've made this calculation of this topic. I've been talking about a lot, and I think we've addressed it. I will say professionally that I am still baffled as to why we can't have a parking reduction here. I just feel like I have to share that because I know an elderly housing project is not going to require this many spaces. And I think it's unfortunate when people are talking about rainfall events and runoff, amount of flooding, that we should be, I feel like ethically as a professional engineer, I should at least talk about, how we have an opportunity to reduce impervious cover and runoff. And, I think that if there is, I will share, I'm going to make a recommendation to the client that we, revisit this at some point. But, as it stands right now, the board has taken a vote on it. I just am saying that personally for the record. I wish the board would reconsider that. So that, with that, Mr. Chairman, we have addressed all of the compliance items. This chamber system in the back has been redesigned to address all the impervious area. We meet all the parking standards, which I think is covered in the memo. The water and sewer connections haven't changed from when we presented the plan, many months ago. It's really been a parking lot, landscaping and drainage exercise. We have made a submission to the Alteration and Terrain Bureau for this project. We have requested a waiver for a time frame, and I will share that when we've done that in the past on similar type housing projects or elderly or workforce housing, we do get a permit in a very reasonable amount of time. And so we anticipate the same on this one. I look forward to moving this project forward. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
First of all, thank you for the clear indication how you from the population. That is not there. And I'm wondering if we believe that it's within our purview to set the actual plans and materials. And we because we have a enforcement conservation to reconsider the clears.
Yes, and we are not opposed to revisiting the vegetation. And I did see that. I'm sorry I didn't address it. We were proposing 12 pear trees. A pear tree is a nice flowering tree, so it is very aesthetically pleasing. But we certainly would be happy to look at, crab apple is kind of the same And, Mr. Franks, I don't know if you have a preference on, pear, crab apple. The crab apples are nice, but the conservation commission is asking for us to consider substituting the pear trees for crab apples and service pears, and I can see an issue with that.
I can speak to that a little bit, if I may, just
Sure.
speak my question. So the issue with the pear trees is that we are most entities of discouraging planning boards from recommending those. Because they're huge for grade, they're pretty until they're not, right? But they're about 40 feet tall and they're, and so my thought is that most of what's shown in that parking area to break up to the asphalt and to give shade and seasonal colors. It would be my preference that we replace those with trees that are similar type. Yes, there's over 1,000 crab and many of them are prone to fire, but it tends to be about 20 feet tall. And so the other option that the Conservation Commission recommended is service area, which serves to be about 30 feet tall, and those are really nice. But I wonder if you would consider yet another option, which is unlike the crab apple, a native species, and that's the hornet, I'm sorry, circus, which is red. Okay. Red bud. And the reason I recommend that is that it's pretty good all season and it does really well in summer. Beautiful with spray, the shade of the tree is nice. It's tall, it's more of a lollipop shape than a beige shape, so you can get the volume of it at high. And the leaves are really pretty in the fall. It's year-round, really pretty. So that's a specific recommendation, and furthermore.
Do you have a problem with that, Mr. Frank?
No, but I don't know what the cost of this is, so, it's a public-private partnership with tax credits for senior housing that has limited money available, so if you offset, is it great if private can absorb it? Certainly, we do that, yeah. But, we have limitations to what we're allowed to do, so I wouldn't want to promise it, but if it's variable in price, of course.
So just to. This is an expert on trees for municipal settings. And he writes that every city, town, municipality, and garden should enthusiastically embrace redbuds. They add seasonal ornamental attributes to landscapes, rewarding with expressive and much anticipated spring flowers, elegant and artistic branching structure, clean, dark summer foliage, and respectable yellow fall color. So highly recommend it from the guy. Yeah, red bud. Red bud, but yeah, it's not red maple. No, there's plenty of red maple. Show me red maple. Yeah. So, it'd be wonderful if that's consider that to replace these, how it compares, it can be shorter than the very and then another question on actual trees is, as you have explained how you made the calculation for the rear parking lot, how did you count the 8 frontage trees? Which number of those trees? Because most of those along that frontage is very small, and I would think that most trees that along that frontage along.
Right, so we have, we have a pear tree here, one here, so that's 3, right?
So you're counting those as trees.
Well, they're, those who stated they grow to 40 feet in height, so they would qualify as a shade tree, certainly. And then we have the blue spruce out front, and we have 1, 2, I think there's even one under that, but 3, 4 of those. And so that's.
So the way you got your second.
Absolutely. I think effectively as a tree, it does address that recommendation.
Okay, and then just a final thought, which is that, you know, all of these, we have discretion in all these considerations. What's your recommendation? It's just saying, you know.
Yes. Jay Ward, 16 Houghton Point. I'm glad you went through the parking calculations. Let me just ask the board, if I have 10 digits on my two hands, are my thumbs 20% of my digits? Or are they 25% of my digits? 2 divided by what? The regulation says 10% of the interior of the parking lot. So if that implies that just as I might say 20% of my digits are thumbs, that the 10% of landscaping that's interior to the parking lot is part of the interior of the parking lot. Just as my thumbs are part of the digits on my hands. So that means that it's a minor point, but it's one of the reasons that there's been some confusion about all this is the assumption is that 10% of implies that it's 10% of the whole with the 10% deducted from it. 10% of 90%, in other words, or 9%. So it's a difference of 1%, the 18. But I just want to point that out and let the planning board sort that through in your heads. Because this regulation applies to other developments as well down the future and so on. And if you say 10% of, then that's 10% of the whole, and that 10% is part of the whole. And that's my argument about the mathematics of it. And that would, it's 1%, which is 30, well, it could be 375 feet, it could be 300 whatever feet of square feet of the parking area that isn't landscaped. And it's one of the reasons when I look at something like this plan, I don't see visually that it looks like 10%. I can understand, and it's really helpful the way you've outlined it, Chad. We color coded it, and I can see on there what you're counting. And I don't really have any quibbles with what you're counting. It's just the way the calculation goes doesn't sit well with me, but that's what the planning board can decide, not me. So that's up to you folks, how you want to read that. The other thing I'll say is that I was told that one of the other knocks on the calorie pear is that it smells.
Second one. I don't know if that was part of, Rachel Elkins, free picture point. On this south side here, I think we spoke about landscaping. And of course, this is the side that is going to be highly visible. The side's not going to be just the general witness right there. But I was under the understanding that the landscaping would be all the way across here. I don't see anything here, nothing there. That's just me.
We added the ways, if you may recall, we added landscaping down along this section to help shield the parking. But we could.
Yeah, that's not going to be visible from the road, but all of this will be. And, you know, I thought we had something along there.
We meet all the landscaping requirements for this section. I mean, be happy to shift, you know, some of the trees around if the board would like, but there's no. We can get into that detail, talk about it. We've got to shift the tree or two around. You know, take one of these and put it here on the gable. We actually have a fair number of plantings through this side here. We have some arborvitae, and we have blue spruce. I mean, so I think we're only really talking about maybe this stretch right here.
I don't remember what state it was, or meeting, but I remember it connected when you're upstairs at one meeting and asking why there was no landscaping in that third section on the south side. It just sticks out when you look at a picture like this. would finally look like. There was nothing in front of that part of the building from the south side. I remember speaking to that, so it's done here in the many minutes.
In reference with the original.
This was the exhibit plan that we presented. That showed the layout at the meeting, and you can see if you had any landscaping along, this section here. But we clearly have changed that. You can see the vast amount of landscaping that we've added. I mean, it just, but again, we're happy to shift in places, a couple, or a tree or something there, but I think what we need to understand is we're gonna be traveling on the road, through here. You're gonna be looking, into the site really through where we try to concentrate a great deal of that landscape. And we do meet the regulations, we actually exceeded because we've added, as we suggested, we have added some landscape.
Well, that's very true. We do be visible to people at the business next to aviation lane. They're not here to say anything, but I would say if I were visiting there, where they have an outdoor area and everything, you would certainly notice that if there's nothing, there's some one more tree really. Very
And arborvitae's, you've got, if you were to have a paragraph in that is, instead of arborvitae's, that would be similar to that is on the front, in that location, not under here. Put 4 or 5 arborvitae's, those are very expensive trees, that are not very. I mean, it's sensitive to the cost of things, but we're also highly cognizant of the impact that this very large structure is going to have in the densely populated area that is occupied. So I think it's not unreasonable for us to make sure that we can screen it and soften the impact of the next, as much as possible. Really reasonable for representative.
Right, but and that may be fine, but we're talking about compliance. Do we meet compliance hearings are generally, you meet the regulations or not? It's not, we're not here looking for the approval where we'll be negotiating, the landscape. I think we're at a different stage. With that said, I'm not trying to be difficult.
Right.
I'm just trying to make sure we stay within the boundaries of something here. We could add one more tree right here, which I think would balance the distance. Right, so, but we have to agree on this, so if we add a tree here. Right, or somewhere in this location, right there. That balances kind of the distance between the trees along that section. Would that address the concern?
I think, and I suppose I'm not supposed to speak of it, but if I were living in that building, it would mean a lot to me to have a tree outside. That section has nothing outside of it. It's just that last section.
So we would ask that be allowed to be an administrative thing so that we can hopefully make it through the compliance hearing.
And I understand it is better than it was, and you did put some in there, but why did you put one in there anyway? But I think we soften the impact of the whole building too.
Let's say yes, in administrative. And I'm going to show, I'm planning board, Jack.
Rachel, can I just say this, that, I would just ask that the board consider what you said, moving something like right here. Way back here is gonna be back by the airport. Nobody's gonna see that, but up here, everybody's gonna see that. So, if there is any way to move that,
Everybody have some things to generate, so that we should talk about.
Yeah, we have, we have the blue spruce up in here, we have, really kind of a hedge of arborvitae along this section, then we have trees through,
Right here, in addition to this one, would make a big difference.
Any other comments or questions from the public? Anything on mind? Thinking about what you were asking about parking. And what it might do, with the landscaping. I'm inclined to ask that we continue the public hearing until the 27. And have you, and then with what you're suggesting, what you feel as a professional we should be looking at and showing the landscaping changes that would encourage to do that. I think we still have a lot to digest. On this. That's my have a consensus of the board.
So you're saying that you personally feel that we as a board should reconsider the reduction of these components in
It would be-
the parking spaces?
It would still fall within the compliance part of this. Or we would just continue the public hearing and look at what the suggestion and what landscape changes could be there. So we could have, that way we could have time with it. I think that was basically the only main that we had.
Well, can we talk about it, Mr. Chairman, because, we're at a compliance hearing. Feel like this is a really simple discussion, and I think I'd at least like to have it and to just go blindly into another hearing, coming back with a plan that we maybe, and I'm not suggesting, I don't think where you're going is a good idea, but I would like to talk about some details, of that. And for example, what we're talking about is basically a 23 or 4 space production. I think it's 23. So you have 14 spaces on this backside. Right, so we would look at getting rid of both. Our proposal would be, to move the parking, this way, from the back and keep the drainage, out there. So you have, more green space in the back, the site. You would have, we would get rid of, 14 here. And then if you take a look at the center, basically for every, row of spaces is 4. So we'd be taking, 2 rows of spaces there, which would be 8. So now you're at, you're right around the number that we would be at. So we're essentially, you take the landscape islands, you take these 14 spaces, and then you would shift that way. And maybe we leave these 14 off the end, and we just keep shifting in, keeping the landscaping. And so at that point, if you think about it, you have 4. You would lose 4 spaces linearly in the center. And so if it's 24, let's just say for round numbers, we're talking about 24 spaces, we would lose 6 of these. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Probably would actually be 5 because we're losing a couple of parallel spots here as well. And then this whole back will just come in. We keep the 14 off the end because the more thinking about it out loud, if we have the access aisle, it's efficient to have the parking off the back when you have the aisle already. But it would allow us to remove, so if we remove 5 of these parking bays, if you will, that would be 20 spaces. And then, maybe 3 parallel spaces here would be 23.
Each set you're keeping the same square footage the landscaping would reduce the land.
We wouldn't reduce the internal landscape.
Percentage is actually going to go up.
Correct.
Are you saying that it would remove this block?
No, what I'm saying is if you can envision these landscape blocks, they would go this,
Yeah.
everything would go this way, 5 spaces.
5 times 4. Plus the extra.
Plus that 3 here.
Feels like it's the same part.
But the board, I mean, my point is here we are in a compliance hearing. The board would need to approve that waiver for us to move in that direction. So if you want to, I'll formally request the waiver tonight. If you approve it, we're happy to go forward and make the plan changes.
What's the feeling on the?
I've been reading about parking. I don't know if you've heard this before, okay? But when you originally came in, you had numbers from other similar projects that indicated that you have first-hand experience with how many parking spaces these facilities generate. And it was funny, or 20% less than what the proposed here, right?
It was more than one. We came in with, I think it was, we presented and it's been a while. But I believe it was it 72 or 75 spaces? Jack, it was 1 point.
It's Jack Frank, Seven Government Group. This is data from the State Housing Finance Authority, state agency, over 40 years of data that they have for hundreds of developments like this in rural and metropolitan areas or larger areas around the state. And that's 0.9 spaces per unit. On a case with 74 units, looking at 64, 65, with a few for staff. So that's the standard.
But we have no public transportation, so is it account for
Yes.
rural areas?
It does, yeah.
But the reality is in the regulations only allow a 20% reduction, so the requirement is 117. 80% of that would be the 117. Would be 94. So we'd be at 94 spaces in total.
And you have that space in the grid you've shown us with your drainage system that can kind of accommodate, if there becomes a need to have that additional parking. You know, at the rear, you can install it as you have for.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the site's designed for 117, but it's just unfortunate. The building just built.
So I would think that considering that the 20% reduction.
You still have, what's the total, what would be the total, I'm sorry?
94.
94 would be, you still have 2 units.
Parking space as opposed to 107.
Absolutely, yeah, that's the 20% reduction. But we still have, the ability, if there was an issue on site, the site's been, I mean, we're not gonna change the drainage. The site's gonna be designed to accommodate 117 spaces, but we're not gonna build the rear part of it. They have the ability to add more.
I was gonna say, but really, people are complaining and with this product. Really,
I mean, the room is there, and I think, I just want to be clear of one thing, it's either a yes or no on parking. I mean, we can't just continue it with the being in no man's land. And so there has to be a comfort level with what we're talking about. We provided math when we presented this project, that 0.9 is the requirement. Mr. Franks has a number of, other sites, that he owns, or in West Swanzey, I believe the parking waiver was granted there. From the same community, same situation. It's almost same exact situation where it was designed where it was accommodated if it was needed, but just not required construction.
I would agree that it would be green space instead of parking spaces. I would favor it. Yeah, that's the presumption, that it would be undeveloped, it would be landscaping. I would trade for that. Right.
I mean, I guess just for me, it's a business, it's made to make money. You're not gonna put in parking spaces, so few parking spaces, so they'd be unable to rent a place. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense, it's antithetical to what they're trying to do, they're trying to fill every unit. And in order to do that, they have to accommodate each individual tenant, and if that requires more parking, you're gonna put in, you can start with 12 spaces. And as they got units, they would just keep adding. I mean, to bring it to a ludicrous place. But they got the room to take as many parking spaces as they could ever possibly reasonably need. And this community values its green spaces, it values its natural surroundings. I know to many people this itself is antithetical, but to make it more antithetical, it just doesn't make any sense to me. If you have an opportunity to plant another piece of grass, another flower, another tree, I would do that in my own life.
There, 33. I'm not necessarily opposed to making the parking area smaller. I like green space, but I've heard several times, like you say, we are in compliance. So if we are going to make the parking space smaller, I would like to hear us say, we would like this many trees, or we would like this, because I was here when James said, can we get this? Yes, we'll do that, and it wasn't about compliance. So, and I'm not saying you're intentionally doing it. I'm just saying, if we're gonna say we're in compliance, then if we're gonna agree to do something, and there's a compromise, then we should put that compromise in writing, or go back and listen to the minutes. And I'm really not trying to sound anti, I get that this is gonna happen, I just feel like it would be nicer if there was more than concern. And I feel like we have both compromised both things. I remember we asked, let's make the roof lower, we came back with capping the roof lower. So I feel like we are all compromised. So let's not just say we're in compliance, let's decide what we want to do and what works for it. At the right cost, again, there's a cost.
I get something to add. Go ahead. Yeah, I think we're not taking into the case here the human element. Maybe seniors that are gonna be there. I think they'd like to look out there window once in a while, maybe see the airport or see the street, or maybe throwing up barriers all the way around the buildings. Counterproductive to a healthy living environment. I mean, more grass is good. But to throw up more trees and just block views is to me counterproductive to a healthy living environment for seniors that are going to live in there, that are going to want to be able to look around a little bit rather than being boxed in. So take that into consideration there. You know, would you like to live in a building where there's trees all the way around and fences all the way around? You can't see out? Think about it for a minute. People want to be able to have views, be able to see airport, traffic, read the book, watching planes come in and come out. It's all positive stuff, but if there's trees in the way, you know, you're not going to be able to enjoy some of those surroundings. So, you know, I think that is something that needs to be taken into consideration when adding or more trees, I guess, for the. That's just my humble opinion, but.
My comment is, the only ones that will be able to see the airport, are the ones that are part of this back building facing the airport, because everything else is perpendicular.
Yeah, we have,
And then,
Yeah.
that's just.
Do we request birdhouses in those trees?
I'm sorry.
I'm just being smart. Do we request birdhouses in those trees?
we good.
When we close the public hearing,
One more.
I've had my hand up for a long time.
well, I'm sorry, you blend in with the. Oh, great.
Oh, I'm sorry. Jay Ward again. I understand that this is it's an interesting compromise, moving the back forward and gaining some space there. The percentage of landscaping goes up. I would imagine a couple points here. One of them is if you do that, you're making less parking lot. You're saving a little money. It would seem to me that that might allow you to put some more trees along the south edge. That's a possible plus for that. And that would satisfy those of us who'd like to see more green space and less asphalt. I can see if we do that, however, and we had to add more parking, it might be more difficult to add the parking simply because how do you get to those parking spaces in that area that you freed up? But that was an engineering problem for the future, not for right now. So I can understand that as well. And I would just, in a slightly different tone, I'd just like to say that I agree that it's nice to look out your window and see something, but at least in my house, we like to look out the window and see the birds and the trees. So there are positives either way. We put landscaping there, we leave it open. And in terms of the town, the neighborhood, having the screening around the buildings makes them look more a part of the neighborhood than something that's just sort of plopped in there as a monolithic. Okay, so I mean, I think the board seems to be working toward a nice compromise. Maybe going back and doing the reduction of parking if we can gain landscaping in the same way. We certainly gain more percentage, but can we also gain a few trees? That's my question. And the other thing is that one of the reasons that I didn't like this project from the very beginning was it didn't see how you could put the required amount of parking and the required amount of landscaping on the lot. So something has to give. And if something had to give, it should be the parking and not the landscape.
Chairman, just really quick. We've proven with the plans that we have before you, we meet all the regulations. We have all the parking. So there is nothing that has to give. Now that we've proven that, is I think just again, this is a personal view. I mean, if the board votes tonight that this is the plan to build, we're here for compliance, then I keep saying compliance, Karen, because it's been a very long process. Right, and we want it to come to a conclusion, and so. But I think we're having a very good discussion about very small improvements to the landscaping, which I think are reasonable. I mean, we've added one tree so far. And, you know, if maybe we, you know, agree to change the species that we talked about earlier, but if we move this parking area to the back, if we don't take the landscaping away, then it does bring some of that vegetation, you know, a little bit closer and provides a little bit more of a buffer that, you know, is being talked about. Now, I think it's important and I think it's reasonable based on, you know, what we're talking about. We don't have to regrade the site. We don't have to, you know, redo, you know, much work. All we really have to do is move the landscape islands 5 spaces forward, pull this pavement in, and now that becomes a grass area out in the back, which could be an area where residents come and, sit down and watch the plants, they, if they so choose, which would be, a reading area. But what I'm suggesting, and I think some people might be taking it out of context, is we're not here tonight to talk about a waiver. We appreciate the discussion. I think it's a good discussion, especially on the heels of, a horrific storm that we, dealt with in this region. And so I'm just asking, and I really would hope that we can come to terms with, this adjustment, the landscaping, the percentages will increase, the separation will get better. We would agree to this one, adding a tree in that location. And, maybe we agree to the species change. If we can come to a conclusion tonight on a waiver and handle it with staff, I mean, their staff is definitely qualified enough to see these revisions through. And we're really talking about some minor changes to the back of the site.
Now I'm going to close the public hearing. I'll do that. When, but have a discussion. Yes. We'll do a little bit of that. I do like the idea of rethinking it a little bit. I agree that they could probably add the parking as they need. If we can get into green space. And I think if we know that we better down, and we need to have that in the back end. All we gotta do is bring in Sarah and let them look at it and say, okay, we still want some. Back. I agree.
I'm in favor of the parking reduction as long as no landscaping is lost. And in fact, more landscaping is gained. An alternative solution, I don't know if this could possibly work, but if we came to shove, potentially the property owner could consult with the people who have the diner, the restaurant next door. For at least some spaces during the off hours when the restaurant is being used. We could use. Yeah. I mean, we could actually. There are more creative solutions than building. There can be like timeshare use of parking spaces.
Methodology, there are parking spaces down along the fence line of the airport by the overhang. But if utilized, if something like that.
But I do think it would. I like the idea of less pavement and more green, and I certainly like the idea of more trees, and I like the idea of taking what will be significant financial savings and using that money to enhance the landscaping. So to use higher quality plantings, like, for example, red buds instead of the pears or grass.
I definitely think it would be an improvement for the people who are going to be living there to have more growing vegetation. Yes. We're back to the same problem. The whole thing is really too big for the thing in the first place, but we can't do anything about that, but we can add, if we can add some more grass and trees, it might be more comfortable.
We cannot add,
Well, grass.
The drainage area or holding area at the end of the parking lot. That cannot be, you can put hot top, no word that, right, hard pavement, but you cannot put any trees or anything like that because of the root problems, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so
And really, all we're asking, what we would ask is, we think this is a step in the right direction. We would be willing to add, the tree and to upgrade the plant to the, the red bud, but we wouldn't want to vegetate this area back here with trees or shrubs. I think it would be best served as an open lawn area. Because if there ever was a need for parking, you'd hate to take a tree down to park there.
You can show a tree. Yeah.
But this is off the So, you know,
So
so,
that's not in your.
no, this is on the site, it's outside of the current parking, so that would, you know, that,
That's true.
yeah, that would still be, so. So what we're talking about, we're happy to increase. With the plant species and the one tree, and then we're moving everything in, and, you know, that's where we stand right now. And we would hope the board would entertain that, if we're talking about. We have to define exactly what the change is, because I don't want to come back to the board, no offense, I'll be in front of you again, but hopefully not with this project.
Sarah, does the applicant need to ask for a waiver in order to present? Or can we voluntarily?
Well, the applicant did formally request the waiver in the winter time, and you guys are denying it, but I think you could reconsider that.
Yeah, we have to take a vote on that first.
Yeah, you would need to have a motion to reconsider it and then address the waiver itself.
Sorry. I don't know the answer to that.
And we not,
You could reopen the public hearing tonight, if everybody's still here. It would be safe, it wouldn't hurt, can't hurt. What?
what is the consensus?
I don't know. what to tell you.
Reopen hearing, making,
Why would we hear that? I might as well get it over.
Yeah.
In my opinion. And you open it, see, open it, just real quick. Give everybody a chance to weigh in. One bit each.
Did you feel comfortable with making a decision at this point? I don't remember you winning as you went around the room. You,
no, my feeling is. That if we shorten up the parking area. And maintain the same square footage of landscaping. And actually maintaining that whatever.
The back side of the grass.
You know, the backside of that, how many square feet or how the depth of it or whatever, as a lawn, that people could come out. In chairs if they wish, or something like that, was, you know, who knows, they may have an air show sometime again. But it would, to me, that would be something that would be more encompassing or more pleasant. Yeah. Yeah, so I would say, but
go ahead.
I was gonna say, I would reopen the public hearing specifically for that one item. Correct.
Everybody went shot and then.
So, motion on that.
I make a motion that we reopen the public hearing. I'll second.
Okay, is there any, from the public, is there any question concerning that one specific item?
There in the river again, is there any way, just take the whole 14, you guys are convincing about 97 and 117, and I know that's a lot, but just take the 14 off the backside and leave the rest of it, is that a option? Okay, so you come down 14, so you had 103 slots versus 97, so we got, I don't know. That's just an idea.
Yeah, that's not what we're talking about.
Oh, okay.
It's not.
Go ahead.
Well, I just say, yeah, sure, do the weighting, but I think we should need 4 trees, just not just the 1 tree there on that south edge. So we've got a big expanse with no trees there. I don't see where 2 trees on the back side and 2 trees on the front side. I think that would be a much fairer.
But it's not, we're not really talking about, we have to limit it just to.
The way,
It's just to the waiver, not as a trade, but as a.
Oh, well, I thought we were talking about
parking space.
for more trees.
No.
But it's not a tree.
It might happen.
Parking production.
Right.
Thank you. Reconsidering the parking part, the square footage of landscaping remains the same.
No, one question in the chat, how many parking spaces if we do this, are we going to eliminate?
We would make sure we had 94 spaces in total.
We'll put that in the motions.
No, did you have something else?
That's 20%. It's 93 and change, but we would round up.
Whether or not to reconsider the parking reduction.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
You have the open necessary to reconsider a waiver request for reduction of parking spaces to 94 spaces. That's what you're doing. You're reconsidering the waiver request.
Okay, so we have a motion. I saw the meter.
You have that.
Move aside.
It's up. It's on there. So the motion is to grant the waiver? No, it's the motion is to reopen the public hearing to reconsider a waiver request for reduction of parking spaces to 94 spaces.
Okay, so be one more.
I support the motion, and I hope that will lead to the board considering other things, but I support the motion so the board can look at other options afterwards.
I'm going to close the public hearing.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So Mark Scalera, I guess the only point I make for the board to consider is it a full reduction of 20%, or maybe it's a 15% reduction, right? You know, you find out the number that you're comfortable with, because if for some reason, 94 spaces, I think it is, whatever it is, just seems a little bit light for that many units with two people, potentially living in each of those units. Some of them want 2 bedrooms. So there might even be more people living there. Anybody, seems to have a car these days. You don't need a car there. It just seems like it's light. I know we said, oh, we can always build more, but try to get it, I think, try to get a little bit right. I think 20% is pretty steep. Maybe 15% reduction. I think that'll benefit a lot of people, including the people living there. That's my gut feel.
Our waiver request is per ton, so that would still be our request.
I'll close the public hearing.
Now move to regrant the waiver.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All in favor?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, we would ask that the board accept the compliant, approve the compliance portion of the site. We would modify the parking layout to reduce down to 94. We would expand the green space along the back of the site. We would maintain all of the landscape islands as depicted. And we would add 1 tree along the south side of the site here, and we would upgrade the species to the red bud instead of the crabapple or the pear. And with those changes, we believe the plan to be complete and in compliance, and we would hope that the board would feel comfortable with staff handling that administratively.
My feeling is that we would accept that you met your compliance with the condition that you submit the changes noted to Mike or Sarah, and that be done administratively. As far as I can see, we've met everything, all the other conditions.
I'll make that a motion.
Okay. You have a second? I'll second. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Well,
Thank you very much.
Did you say no?
No, I said yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're gonna be also. I don't burn wood.
Next item is the site plan modification determination in 126 and then not highway.
I believe a representative from the solar company.
Good evening.
We have some more things.
Yeah, one second.
All we're looking for here is a determination of whether or not the site plan modification.
Megan, you should be on.
For them to add rooftop solar to the Easy Creek building. From the solar, I think it's sunshine. Revision.
Yes, I'm here remotely this evening. Can you all hear me? Are you able to hear me?
If you can hear her.
Yeah. you can hear her.
Okay. I apologize. I'm having some trouble hearing you. Am I okay to go ahead and give an overview of our project?
I think you should speak more slowly.
So maybe if you speak a little bit slower, because they have trouble understanding you.
Okay. Are you ready for me to give an overview of the project?
Are you ready for her to give an overview of the project?
Are you ready for an overview of the project?
This is it, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Just sort of solar panels mounted on a.
Yeah.
A little ton of metal seam,
Yeah.
seam new.
Because this is not actually a site plan modification hearing, this is just determining whether that will be required. That's all of it.
We just have this for another meeting, the last meeting.
No, I brought it up at the last meeting to determine,
For waste management.
I mixed up the buildings.
Oh,
I'm
okay,
sorry.
all right. You're in the same town.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Which speaker?
It seems
Oh.
it's pretty straightforward.
See, maybe.
Yeah, it's not gonna, you know.
We're gonna try to change the speaker.
There's not affecting back on.
Very loud.
Yeah, I got you. Hold it, I got it. I don't think that would be required, so a modification of all the record members.
I'm trying to think why it would be, what would be, you know, a future move, but I mean, we're not really establishing precedent.
What's the difference between getting to put windows in you changing the windows or something?
Increasing the height you would do,
No, not really.
or the run. or-
Well, it definitely is like over 45 feet.
Not,
I don't think it requires some modification. That's my opinion as well.
Are we missing something? Sarah?
No, we're not. That's why I thought, oh, guys could maybe determine it at the last meeting, but at the last meeting, it.
Well, I think what it was, we don't have anything in our.
We don't have any change.
That's why.
The site
The question is,
Right, okay.
Right. I've always viewed it from my perspective is an appliance, if you will.
yeah, exactly.
Effectively is what I'm looking at is it's an exterior appliance, a generator, an air conditioner, any of those sorts of things. The only thing I would say about it, and I know it's not a problem, but just in for the purposes of due diligence,
Because it is a baseball throw, is just to double check with the airport and make sure they're happy with it. Other than that, I don't see a real issue.
I think the airport only concerned is the glare.
Glare, right, that's it. And as long as we get an email from them saying, hey, it's cool, I don't see an issue, to be honest with you.
It's something that could be handled, with the permitting process.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
I believe most of them now are flat black, so it really isn't going to.
Well, and there's literally thousands of them almost on airport property right now, on both east and west sides, so it's not.
Airport's got their own farm.
Right, that's what I'm getting at. So but again, just in deference to our neighbors, because we're good that way. We give our neighbors deference. That's what I would say.
We do complete an FAA review for all of our projects.
Did you want to say something?
I had just mentioned that we do complete an FAA review for all of our projects, so we'd be happy to provide the results of that with the permit.
There you go.
Yeah. So, consensus is do not. Termination. All set. Do not. Okay. So. That's it. Enjoy the solar panels. Yes.
So we see extra power.
Thanks. We're all set.
You're good to go, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much. Apologies for the technical issues. Have a good night.
Bye now.
Expect the one we might want.
Is there anything else?
Yeah, I need to give a book report. This book is so much fun. It's called Paved Paradise by Henry Graber, Gravar, and it's a beach read. Okay, it's really entertaining, really informative, and I learned a lot. I just recommend it. Really like it. Okay. Who's it by? Henry Grabar. Grabar. Gavar.
EV station is we've gone up to.
GRA.
There you go. I'm gonna have a whole
That's something.
plan for recommended reads, because now I'm gonna have 3 for you.
Okay.
This one. Does that tell? Different areas.
Yes,
and stuff like
it's
that. Obviously, like.
We have,
Around my house. Like some rough.
9th Street has a multi-tenant application, and they were going to combine with their public hearing for the site plan review when they have their additional building. But they're coming in for a site plan determination for their new tenant that's going into the existing facility. So that's.
That's usually not too difficult.
Yeah, that shouldn't be difficult at all. We don't have any public hearings for the next meeting, so it's gonna be majority zoning amendments. That's the number you'll get. I've got a list of ones that I've been working on and put together, and Julius has been working on the solar one. I don't know if he'll have it complete to be presented next meeting or not. And we've had some citizens in North Swanzey pulling together an idea for a new zoning district, Village Business 3. And so that will all be in your packet for next week, all of the details. So you'll have a week to kind of sit with all of it, so we can have a good discussion about it on the 27th. And I should probably inform you guys, the 27th will be my last meeting with you, because I will be leaving the town of Swanzey on August 4th. So I'm trying to make it so that we can have a really good, solid zoning ordinance discussion on the 27th, so that you're in good shape moving forward for actual zoning amendment season.
It's critical to remember that if you don't have that good discussion, you will be stuck with me. I would hope that incentivizes everybody to be productive.
And Mike, you're so scary you are.
No, that's exactly opposite, really.
But I'm hoping we can get a good foundation laid for whoever follows in my footsteps in helping you get through zoning amendment season.
No, where you going?
It'll be just fine, an undisclosed location.
Oh. Well, I wasn't gonna stop you.
No,
Go to work at the city of Keene area.
an undisclosed location.
Any other business that we need to rediscuss and bring up?
Lock the doors.
Make a motion to adjourn. Seconded.
Second. It's usually your job.
All in favor?
Unmoved.
Aye.
Right. Bye.
Recording stopped.
The area where